Thanks for that introduction, Tom. I am technically on paper Crisis Services Director for New Mexico Solutions. I'm a therapist by trade and born and raised in Santa Fe, never left. So very much boots on the ground, grassroots. This is my community, and I'm going to do what I can to support it. Uh, Type of philosophy. I was a first responder with Santa Fe County Fire for some time before I got into behavioral health care, and for the past 10 years, I have been working in crisis care. I was at PMS for several years, interning, responding as a therapist, and then managing and running the mobile crisis program there, and also running the Assertive Community Treatment or ACT team there. And I joined New Mexico Solutions 4 years ago when they opened the Crisis Center as the director, and I'm not going anywhere. So I love this job. So I want to open with this quote, and I'll let you all read it, but I want to recommend this book very much. I know it's been mentioned in NAMI groups before, Healing Our Path from Mental Illness to Mental Health by Dr. Thomas Insel. One of the few books that has really a current capture on our behavioral health system, particularly crisis services, which is difficult to find, frankly, from individuals who are providers themselves and can really share a picture of what it looks like inside the crisis care system. I very much align with that same philosophy. People, place, and purpose. So I like to do just a little mini history lesson when I'm talking about crisis work, just to give people an idea of why things look like they do right now in behavioral health care. And this is only for the last, 70 years or so, but certainly we can easily go back to the 50s and 60s of deinstitutionalization, when facilities that were run by state organizations or national organizations were closed, and in most cases appropriately so. However, nothing came after that, and it left massive voids across the country in terms of mental health care, and individuals were left to be supported by their families or to be unhoused. They weren't able to access the care that they needed. We didn't plan for it very well. And my theory is always, if we had JFK, if he'd been able to stick around, he would have helped us build a system. So this is what we have. We have all of these gaps, which really have left us in the state that we're in now, unfortunately. We can also connect that to trans-institutionalization. So this little tiny graph up here, which is hard to see, but what I like to show it because it reflects the direct correlation between losing institutions and treating behavioral health in incarceration. So you'll see the number of psychiatric beds goes down, incarceration rate goes up, and we certainly still see that pattern today. There have been some efforts to fill those gaps in the last 20, 30 years. Assertive community treatment is fantastic. It's wonderful programming. It works really well. Community mental health centers, federally qualified health centers, all trying to make an effort to create access for individuals. But it really is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we really need for services. So I'm happy that crisis services is coming around into more of a behavioral health continuum across the country. Some states have really invested in it and have great connectivity between the different agencies, and some states like our own are really just starting out and exploring crisis services. The key thing about crisis services is that it's low barrier access. So instead of your traditional outpatient structure, people can find crisis services more easily, or it will come to them in many cases. It provides a really great access point that tends to be low barrier, judgment free, prepared to take on any type of disposition, any individual in any state. So here's what it looks like in New Mexico. We have our own unique environment, of course, landscape. I'm sure this group is pretty well versed in the behavioral health history here in New Mexico. We don't have a lot to offer, and we've lost a lot of agencies since the shakeup in 2013 with the Medicaid concerns. We're still building back from that. So what we have is individuals quite often who haven't received services in some time, or who struggle to connect to an agency in their area. So I created this list here that might come as a surprise to some, but I have to say that these top two categories up here are the most common type of individual that we serve here at the Crisis Center. Just move this over here. Experiencing psychosis that don't meet criteria for inpatient care. So this is probably one of the greatest challenges in our work. We have very few inpatient facilities in our state, and Santa Fe, of course, is a small community. We have our own Christa St. Vincent Behavioral Health Unit, but it's small, and the capacity isn't such that they can bring a lot of patients in who might be experiencing, say, bipolar mania or severe depression. It's quite often acute suicidality, homicidality, and they're triaged so you can get a bed that way. But for the most part, individuals who might be experiencing untreated schizophrenia, for example, probably are not going to be admitted into inpatient care. And in many cases, that means that they can't really function through to get to outpatient care either. Unhoused individuals here at the Crisis Center makes up about 35–40% of our clientele, and I see that number rising. So certainly we interface with the shelters quite a bit. The elderly, I have to say, that silver wave that people discuss, it's real, and that population is growing incredibly fast with very few resources and services to support them. We will come into cases quite often that may initially to the community look like a behavioral health issue. For example, an EMS will go to someone's house and they'll need help determining whether it's a behavioral health issue or whether it's possibly dementia or a medical issue. So those cases tend to be very complex and they need time to sort out. So those are quite common. Wait lists, we all know about that and how difficult it can be just to get into traditional counseling. Grief support and acute trauma is something that puts us in the position as providers as having to be ready and trained and comfortable in many different presentations and venues for clients who they may have experienced the death of their child in a car accident. They may have experienced domestic violence or physical violence in their own home. And you wouldn't necessarily think that that would be someone who walks into a crisis center, but the services are so limited that we see it quite often. And we're happy to receive those individuals too. Of course, suicidal ideation, major depression, detox, and substance use disorder treatment is something that is even harder to accomplish than, say, inpatient or partial hospitalization right now. We have some emerging agencies in the state, and we have Santa Fe Recovery Center here in our community. In fact, we share our building with Santa Fe Recovery Center Detox. But in many cases, we have found that the interface between the medical model of detox and the behavioral health model of supporting individuals with severe mental illness is a tough match. And those are specialized services that I think are just starting to emerge in New Mexico. And then at the bottom, you have what I think many communities will plan for, which is the individuals who have a temporary distressing event, a divorce or a loss or loss of job, for example. And I think our services here at the center, the facility was really designed for that type of crisis. So we get creative around here and we've expanded our programs quite a bit to meet the needs of all those individuals. I just have this one cute little picture of the crisis triage center, but it is in fact a pretty welcoming, casual, non-clinical setting. And we meet people right at the front door. So we have had a law enforcement room that was utilized originally to separate individuals who might be needing a little de-escalation, but we found actually just welcoming everybody in at the front door was a much better welcoming and more effective in terms of their treatment and their time here. So this is the basics of the center that most people want to know and need to know. We only serve 18 and up. We would love to offer youth crisis services, and there's some conversation about that, but our facility needs to be adults only. We really don't turn anyone away, with the exception of the inability to control physical violence, frankly, or an acute medical circumstance. We will navigate individuals wherever they might need to go if they do have a medical issue that really they need to have addressed. We'll help them get to the ER or to urgent care. Hence the name triage. But otherwise, we're very comfortable welcoming and working with whomever might come in. It's hard to come into a crisis center, and it can be a big step for people. So we want to be sure to say yes as our first answer, and then we work and make a plan with them. There are no costs to any of the clients here. We do not work with MCOs, and we don't charge anyone. We are able to submit to Medicaid for reimbursement, and we do have BHSD support, but the largest chunk of our support comes from Santa Fe County Community Services Division. That's really why we're here, and it allows us to provide services for anyone. And this program and crisis services in general wouldn't work if it didn't have that blanket coverage where you didn't need to bill in 15-minute increments and you didn't need to get everybody's MCO or insurance information. So it's very freeing as a provider. I think most people feel pretty safe in our space. We have really an interdisciplinary model. So of course we have clinicians here, and we have certified peer support workers who do really powerful work. Great case managers who tend to specialize in intensive social services identification and medical advocacy and behavioral health advocacy. So spending a lot of time looking for inpatient facilities or detox facilities around the state. And happily, we have medication management on site with a wonderful nurse practitioner provider that allows us to provide some initial medication intervention if individuals want that. And of course, we have respite care. So we have showers, laundry services. We'll do the laundry with the client, support them. We have some clothing, a nice relationship with Savers. So we have a little clothing bank and they can pick what they might need. We have hygiene items, things that you wouldn't necessarily receive immediately in an emergency room or in an outpatient therapy center. We can meet them right in that moment with whatever they need. And maybe that's just to sit down for a minute and have a meal and warm up and put on some clean clothes. We do also have 2 small respite rooms that are private, and people can rest, have a little privacy, and that can make a world of difference in terms of engaging and starting the process of treatment planning. No referral needed, no appointment needed. We're walk-in basis, which really works for the folks that need to access our care. It's not really appropriate to ask them to make an appointment time. When they get here, that's the right time for them. So we're ready for them. And we do support a lot of families and caregivers of individuals with severe mental illness as well. And as it says here, collaborative linkage to partnering community resources. So we run ourselves as kind of a hub for the community, and we will find the best place for our clients alongside them. Everything that we do is short term, but short term can mean 4 weeks, can mean 8 weeks if that individual is on a wait list or we can't identify the right treatment plan and they still need that support. We have the ability to do that. This lays out our services. SMI symptom management leans into a little bit of what I was describing as folks who need care that can't access inpatient care but need somewhere safe to go. Their functional capacity is such that they're not going to be able to get through a scheduled intake, for example, at a community mental health center. They can come here and we can help them establish a little bit of personal safety, help them find tiny little steps that might get them through to preparing for a medication management appointment. And that could be weeks, it could be months. As I mentioned before, our clients will be in chronic crisis frequently. So they'll have a number of things that they're working on, and their mental illness diagnosis is really just one of them, but we're comfortable with whatever they might need in this space. A little bit of stabilizing gap therapy. We don't really diagnose and we don't develop extensive therapy treatment plans with clients. We will do our best to connect them to the appropriate long-term therapists or counselors. But should they need 6 to 8 weeks, for example, of counseling while they're waiting, we can do that. We also are able to provide that for reentry referrals or public defender referrals who might need a short, defined amount of therapy services. We have great groups right now. Seeking Safety, most people are familiar with that. Campfire Cooking, which takes Food Depot supplies, creates a menu every week, and then we can prepare it with the clients. Sew and Grow is a gardening group. Hearing Voices is a wonderful group, and Art and Music, which is really sensory. And all of those groups are drop-in, and the providers are prepared to support individuals at different needs levels, different acuity in their diagnoses. You might not think that Sew and Grow, a gardening group, for example, would be part of a crisis center, but in fact, having that outside low pressure contact is really healing and wonderful for folks. And last year, we were able to acquire a grant from State Opioid Response Resources, the DOH. And so we now have street outreach several times a week and methadone transport, and we provide harm reduction services here at the center. That very much was a piece that I felt was missing from crisis services when we first started, and it's a very natural fit for us. So we're happy to have that and hope that funding continues. And our future plans, I think it's appropriate for us to also be able to offer MAT, medically assisted treatment, and at least linkage to methadone or mood services. We're participating in a research program right now through Columbia University. We're looking at how to provide very low threshold Suboxone initiation. It might be just a street contact, or it might be coming into the center and having a home prescription, and then receiving the supportive care here at the center. So that's a little bit outside of the box, in terms of the baseline of where we started, but I feel like it's very appropriate. So I'm happy to be growing in that direction. In addition to the Crisis Triage Center, we also have a 24/7 mobile crisis response program. This program in particular has been funded by Santa Fe County for 10 years. So it's one of the more mature programs in New Mexico. I'm happy to have been involved in these past 10 years in one form or another. And it's even more of an agile, flexible, and powerful model to reach clients wherever they might be. So the logistics you see up above, in New Mexico, the age of consent for behavioral health is 14 years and above. So we can support individuals who are 14 and up. Our particular program responds in partnership with law enforcement and EMS. We have run it several different ways. We had a public open access number initially, and growing and learning lessons, we determined that the best way to deliver our care safely was with responding with law enforcement. So they will call us out and we can meet them at the scene. And oftentimes we can take over the scene if they're comfortable and the scene is safe, and we can spend time there. We respond anywhere in the county, so it's 2,000 square miles. It could take us an hour to get to Edgewood, but we'll get there. The team is 2 folks, often a therapist and a case manager. Sometimes we'll have 2 therapists, which is nice. And a lot of I don't know, there's a lot of mobile crisis talk across the country now, which is great, but every mobile crisis program needs to match their own community. So the needs in New Mexico and in Santa Fe County are probably pretty different than the needs that you might find in, say, a municipal area. So we learned that we really did want to have a clinician responding because the cases were quite acute, and needed some clinical expertise and needed some supervision often. So we're happy to be able to offer that. And what we have in our structure is a pool of our therapists and case managers from the crisis center will be the same people responding to people's homes. And as I mentioned, funded by Santa Fe County. We do have certification through the state now, so we're able to bill mobile crisis services through Medicaid. This is a new development across the country. New Mexico is the 7th state to be able to do so. So we're looking forward to growing the program through that funding. In my world, and in my philosophy, as I've tried to develop this program, I've felt like supporting law enforcement and supporting first responders was part of our responsibility, not just as partners on scene, but as neighbors and community members themselves. So it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to go on scene with them and help them problem solve and help them de-escalate in maybe a safer way. And then quite often we're contacted to provide them as individual support or group debriefing. We support 911 dispatchers quite often for group supervision, and tend to have a little bit more of, I would say, a tailored engagement because we are participating also on that same scene that may have been traumatic to them. So it leads to sometimes a more productive or deeper conversation. And of course, ER, jail diversion, that's really what we focus on, and we're able to accomplish that pretty often. And sometimes you'll respond to a client you're just going to keep going to build that relationship, get some familiarity, try to create a plan, but it might take 6 months, it might be a year. And when they know you, they might be ready to say yes sometime to services. This is the powerful stuff of why it works the way it does. First, the preparedness level, which you wouldn't necessarily find in all mental health settings. And then the follow-up work is really where 75% of the work is. It's the follow-up, the navigation. The scene is really just the, exciting moment where you may connect with a client, but then you can start to do the work usually the next morning after. Building a network for an individual's treatment plan. It's really appropriate and helpful when you're connecting with all of the other agencies and resources that have been supporting that individual. So you'll build a plan with the client, have the ROIs completed, and then you can start looking at maybe there are charges that this individual is struggling with. Maybe they are trying to get through a LifeLink intake process but haven't been able to. Let's try and bring that all together. And my favorite thing about this work is that it's not restricted by time constraints or billing structures. So we can work with someone for 5, 6, 7 hours if we need to, which is a great luxury, frankly, as a provider. So moving forward, I think that crisis care is a wonderful tool, and I hope that it doesn't fall out of, it's popular right now and it's a hot item, but it's very effective. And so I'm hoping that our state in particular will continue to support it. As all these things listed here, the interdisciplinary factor, the low barrier factor. It's non-clinical, so a lot of people are more comfortable coming into it. And you're also creating networks between agencies that were definitely siloed previously. And that's the way to do successful work. It really has to look like that. So in that sense, it can be kind of a hub of business support, frankly, between agencies. We have a lot to do to get there. And these are some of the ideas and efforts that I've started to champion. The metrics piece is a little tricky for crisis work, but we're getting there. SAMHSA has done some good work to identify outcomes for crisis, timeframes for crisis. And as we're doing this, clear definitions and clear regulations, what that means is that if the state is going to support them, they need to be able to intelligently identify what it is. And that involves communicating with the providers. Cultural uniqueness, applying to New Mexico in particular, not Georgia. That's important in terms of making it work. And then receiving multiple funding. We're fortunate and rare to have a huge chunk of our funding from Santa Fe County, but you're not going to find that for most behavioral health programs across the nation. So there's my PowerPoint, and I much prefer answering questions. So I haven't been looking at the chat. If anyone has any questions, please feel free.
Why don't we, Kate, go ahead and take some of the questions in the chat. The first one was just, can they get a copy of the presentation? Jessica, are we going to have that up on the website if Kate gives it to us?
Well, we'll have the recording by tomorrow, which I could definitely email, and it would be up to Kate if she wanted to send us the presentation.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. No problem.
Okay, I'll send that out as well then.
Okay, so we'll get that sent out. Thank you very much. The next question was, would this service be appropriate for individuals with services in place, such as developmental disabilities, waiver,
That's
who
a
are in
good
a supported
question.
living placement?
Yes, it's a good question. I think the first answer would be yes in certain circumstances. So if you're intervening for someone who's experiencing a crisis and you need more support in that moment, we will say yes, we will respond, we'll be there. It's a little trickier when you're trying to develop a long-term treatment plan for that individual because you're working with the other agency's plan and those providers and those specific needs. So quite often in those circumstances, we will stabilize, support, and then refer them back to their residence, for example. We do have a lot of individuals who might come in and have not been identified as having developmental disabilities previously, and we can help them obtain those services. It's a long, long road, but that's one of those areas where we need to be accountable and appropriate case managers who know how to do that.
Thank you very much, Kate. Does anybody who contributed to that question have any more they want to ask? You can unmute and ask. Okay.
That's the question. I just think I work with individuals on the waiver, and I sometimes when we get to crisis, we just have. I've had a few situations with pretty scary interactions with police, and the staff being trained but needing support, and the person just taking off, and then or unhelpful, getting ER visits, repeated ER visits, where they just get sent right back home. But I get what you mean about the intricacies of multiple agencies and that kind of thing.
And I think it's your point is well taken. Absolutely. I think that we strive to slow down that process, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be two officers and paramedics and firefighters standing around an individual with their hands on their hips, right? Not solving necessarily a lot. That's really why I got out of fire and into behavioral health. So we can be there too. And if you had a mobile crisis provider in that setting, they would sit down next to the client, ask for some space, create some curious questions. So it can be done, but it's careful navigation for sure.
Thank you, Kate. I had a question, and that is if somebody isn't sure whether or not whatever they need is possible from the Crisis Triage Center, from La Sala, uh, is there a number they could call to talk to somebody before showing up to see whether or not the resources they need might be accessible through the La Sala?
Yes, absolutely. I can put our contact information and our address, etc., in the chat later. But an individual could call and ask to speak with a therapist or a clinical supervisor, get those questions answered. Um, I would say that we get a lot of questions about housing, no surprise, and we can receive those folks and get them on the right track, but we wouldn't be the right service to do long-term, say, voucher applications or hotel vouchers and financial support. And we do have some Santa Fe County flex funds for emergency services, but they're more for medical needs, clothing needs, hygiene needs, as opposed to hotels and vehicle support. But we can get you to the right place. So yes.
Thank you very much. Another question. Is La Sala located on Galisteo, not far from St. Michael's Drive? And if so, are there public transportation services to or near your location?
Yes, that's exactly right. We are on that odd end of Galisteo Street, just before Magistrate Court. Previously, this building was a Santa Fe Community Administrative Office and Santa Fe Recovery Detox Center. We're pretty easy to get to. We do have public transportation that ends right at St. Michael's and Galisteo. We can also support individuals who maybe who could use Medicaid transport, 211, or we can talk about other creative ways to get them here. We don't want
Excellent.
that to be a barrier.
Great. And Jessica just posted hours of operation and address for anybody.
Great.
And then we had a question. Are the classes you mentioned, campfire cooking, sew and grow, art and music, drop-in style?
Mm.
Is there a set schedule for these classes?
They are drop-in for clients who are established with us. So you'd have to come in and have a small assessment, as every client does, and have a plan, a stabilizing plan. And then once you've done that, you're welcome to drop into any of the classes. And those are scheduled. We have one each day at different times of the day.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay.
There's another question.
Did I miss it? Go ahead.
Uh,
Betty, ask.
Louise asked, have you been invited to make this type of presentation to law enforcement?
Yes, and we do it quite often. In fact, part of the mobile crisis team working and growing is frequent briefings with law enforcement. So we'll go to every shift, every station, generally quarterly. And we're looking at expanding. We've offered mental health first aid in some groups and possibly going to offer CIT, although I'm conflicted about that, but we make ourselves as available as possible for law enforcement. Yeah.
That's great. I do have a question, if I can. I've often kind of wondered, Kate, how the mobile crisis team people arrive at the scene. Do they take their own car, or or do they ride with the EMTs, or what do they do? I'm sorry about my dog barking.
Can't hear your dog, Betty.
Oh,
Um, they, they would respond in their personal vehicles, particularly after hours. If it's during the day, they would take an agency vehicle, but very much a homegrown program. So they would receive a phone call from 911 dispatch requesting their presence at a scene, and they obviously they're going normal traffic, not lights and sirens, but we tend to aim for 30 minutes as a destination time, and they're plain clothes, and yeah.
so that's good. So I also want to, I don't think you've mentioned this, Kate, but that's something that I always tell people that call our NAMI line is, particularly family members, that they are welcome to go and speak with you guys. And you guys have a wealth of support and information that you can help family members with as well. So
Yes, thank
really
you for pointing
appreciate
that out.
that, because prior to you guys being on the scene, there wasn't much that we could send families to.
Right. Yeah.
So,
And we're very happy to offer that service.
yeah,
We do that often.
thank you.
Tom, Lisa also had a hand up.
Oh, please, go ahead.
Hi, Kate.
Hi, Lisa.
I just want to say thank you so much for the wonderful work that you all do. I think it's imperative to our community to be able to have this service provided to such a special population. I was really curious about the curriculum actually for your groups. Out of curiosity, do you know on average maybe how many of the individuals who've already been assessed by your agency get to come into those?
Well, certainly they're offered to about 100% of the individuals that come
Right.
and be assessed. I would say 10% take advantage of them. And it's going to be a certain individual who doesn't have other services and they need something to stabilize them in the day. And it doesn't need to be a therapy session, but it can be a group. So I don't know if that answers the question exactly.
No, it did. I was just more curious how open the individuals were to coming into those, because it's such a new thing to see offered in that type of service, and I think it's so awesome and really, really important. So I was really excited to see that that's something you guys are offering, and just just knowing that that's there, I think it's something wonderful that we as a community can also kind of say, hey, did you know that this is happening at La Sala, right? And so it'd be really cool to kind of get some kind of literature around that to make it maybe more aware for people who are established with you that this is something too, which I know you guys probably already tell them, but still, that's the first time I've heard of that. And it's really, really great. I loved
Yeah.
seeing that on your presentation. So thank you for that. Thank you for creating that for our community. Yeah,
Thank
wonderful.
you. Thanks, Lisa. The groups really, they just made sense. And when the center first opened, there was talk about offering an IOP, which was not going to be appropriate for most clients in crisis. But knowing that there's another service, it's low impact, you can participate at your own level. It just makes all the sense in the world in terms of comfort and stabilization.
Thank you again for what you do. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Kate. Another question, are you working with or will you be working with the newly implemented assisted outpatient treatment program?
Yes, we worked. I provided some consultation and support with the original groups as it was coming to fruition in its planning stages. AOT is a very specific intervention that doesn't fit um, most individuals, but some can really benefit from it. We are working with the First District program. We're able to refer clients to them that we feel are appropriate. And with our mobile crisis team, we're kind of well suited because we'll interface with clients in the community as well as being able to provide them support from the center. One of the great challenges of AOT is that it's difficult for unhoused individuals to thrive with that program. And we
Mhm.
have a pretty hefty homeless scenario here. However, um, we're creative. We try to make it work. So if it's the appropriate program for someone, we'll support it.
Thank you very much. Next question. Are psychiatric nurses at La Sala able to administer medication to someone experiencing a mental health crisis who is undiagnosed or wants to try medication?
Mhm. The short answer is yes. Um, that client would need to have a brief assessment, not at all the lengthy psychosocial rehab, biopsychosocial that you might see at outpatient clinics. It is your issue of concern, a little bit of history, and then they would meet with that prescriber to discuss what they might be comfortable with. So it would be, we do have a lot of starting first trials for clients, but we will always work to get them to a long-term provider.
Excellent. Thank you. I have a question, and that is, how long does somebody come and stay at your place? Both sort of shortest, longest, average, sort of what's it like to walk in there, either for the first time or just on a regular time?
Mhm. Most of the time, initial contacts will be about 3 hours, maybe 5 hours. Um, for the individual that needs a safe place to be for symptom management, they're welcome to stay throughout the day, really. They would have providers checking in with them, engaging with them, supporting respite services. Um, After that, they might come back in to see a case manager, for example, for 2 hours. They'll work on a Medicaid application or getting a phone. So, and I see a question about the end of the day. End of the day is tough for so many of our clients because there are not a lot of places for them to go, frankly. Um, Either there's conflict in their family home or there's a shelter, but it's not appropriate for them or they're not welcome back to that shelter. So, we'll do anything we can, but again, it's creative. We send a lot of folks, we will drive them ourselves over to Pete's shelter, which is now Urban Alchemy, and we'll get used to that. But it looks like that every day. There isn't any other, I'd love to have a crisis stabilization unit where you could keep people overnight for several days, a 14-day program, but that's kind of pie in the sky right now. We are actually licensed as a 23-hour facility, but the workforce is such that it's extremely difficult to staff even to 8 p.m. So maybe someday.
Well, thank you. But your last answer brings up another question. And since I don't think we have any hands up at the moment, uh, what is the biggest need that you see in our community for the population that you serve that
Mhm.
isn't being met? Not necessarily one that's in your charter, but you see a lot of people needing care. And I was just curious, when you think about what would help them thrive, what are the one or two things that you think the community would be great to invest in?
Mhm. Permanent supportive housing was my first answer. I think it is a magic answer for so many circumstances. Um, and it needs to look a certain way, right? You need to have on-site support 24/7, and it can't necessarily be a sober living facility, for example. Um, it needs to be easy to get into, and it needs to be available for years and years for individuals, and maybe throughout their lives. That would be transformative. Um, so I'm on that soapbox quite a bit these days, as efforts start to come to fruition for that. I would say the next thing followed up would be inpatient care access. And we want to see that across the country. If an individual were welcome who just needed to stabilize, say, on a new medication regimen and needed, 7 to 10 days, that would be amazing. But that's pretty rare.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have any more questions? Okay, seeing none, I want to thank our speaker for an outstanding presentation. And more than that, just Kate and New Mexico Solutions. I think your guys' leadership in our community to pull something like this together, make it happen, really, really has made a difference. I remember all the work we did. I remember Betty and I testifying at the county commission meeting to get the gross receipts tax increased 1/8 cent to be able to pay for this center. And, I really feel good that we stayed there late that night and, pounded on the table and got the vote through and approved because, uh, I think it's just made a huge difference in our
That's why we're here,
community.
Tom. Thank you for those efforts to all of
Yeah.
you. And that gross receipts piece was genius.
Yeah.
Well, there are a lot of people work to make that happen, and
Yeah.
we're all grateful that it did.